regardless of where you are in life, regardless of what type of job you have, what type of title you have, it doesn't matter. You just show up and you do your best.
Today's guest is Talethia Thomas, former FAA executive and vice president. Her whole journey is rooted in purpose, standing up for others who can't stand up for themselves. Today, we talk about what it means to be a courageous leader and to bloom where you are planted. Let's get into it.
This is Kobeck on Air. CEO and co-founder Hisham Jalil built a workplace that people trust. Now he's interviewing other people-first leaders to explore what shapes them. Today's episode of Kobeck on Air is brought to you by Kobeck. We help organizations improve processes, decision-making, and performance. Stay tuned for more. The views expressed in this episode are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of their employer.
Well, welcome, Talethia. Miss Talethia Thomas, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure having you here. I was looking at your LinkedIn as where I can find your experience. So most recently, you were the Executive Director of Strategic Workforce Planning and Corporate Engagement. And before that, you were VP of Management Services, and then Deputy VP of Management Services. Before that, Senior Advisor of Air Traffic Services. And before that, you were in AJI. And before that, you were in the Army. So welcome. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
So talk to me a little bit about before we go through your journey, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. We refer to it as a 757. So I was born and raised, went to high school there, went to college. I graduated from Old Dominion University, Go Monarchs.
Nice.
So yeah, Norfolk is home for me.
Nice. What did you study?
Old Dominion Financial Management.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be a CFO at one point.
Oh. Yeah. And looking at your career, I don't think you did a lot with financial stuff, right?
Early on.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, early.
Okay. So what'd you do right out of college?
Right out of college, when I think about my career and my career journey, I recently coined myself from intern to executive. I've worked in 3 different federal departments: Department of Defense, Department of Treasury, and then Department of Transportation. And that's where I ended my career at FAA. So right out of college, I moved here to DC, and it was in the 90s, early 90s, and there was a government freeze. There was a hiring freeze. So my first job was a summer job. So I took a summer job. I worked at Fort Myer in the civilian personnel office. At the end of the summer, they wanted to keep me, but it was a hiring freeze. One of my bosses knew that I had graduated with a degree in financial management, so she referred me to the bank. And at the time, it was Bank of America, maybe Bank of America. And the plan was to go into the management trainee program. Well, Bank of America, or Nations Bank at the time, they were going through mergers and acquisitions. So what's the first thing that gets cut? Trainee programs. So I worked as a teller, worked on the teller line for a while, hoping that things would shift in the banking industry, but it did not. So I went back to Fort Myer for the summer, the next summer. And at the end of the summer, the government freeze lifted, and there were 3 intern positions announced. One was for a budget analyst intern, one was for a contract specialist intern, and one was for a personnel management intern. And so I applied for all 3. I got offered all 3, and so I chose the budget analyst intern.
Okay.
So that's how I started my federal career.
So you did do
Department
some
of Army.
financial stuff. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So so that early career phase, for me, that phase is a common theme there, first impressions. When you show up on a job, regardless of whether it's your ideal job, it really matters how you show up, how you communicate, how you connect. And I took jobs, as I mentioned, the summer jobs going to the bank. Even though those weren't the ideal jobs, I took those jobs to, one, get experience and to get my foot in the door. So I stayed with the Department of Army as a budget analyst intern, graduated from the program, and then I went to Department of Treasury, Office of the Inspector General. Now, this is a funny story. At least I think it's funny. While I was a budget analyst intern with the Department of Army, one day I returned from lunch, and there was a vacancy announcement in my chair for a OIG auditor. And it was a career progression, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13. And so I asked my colleagues, who put this in my chair? because I worked with a bunch of guys and they were pranksters. And no one fessed up. So I was surprised. I was excited. And so I said, are you all trying to tell me something? Are you all trying to get rid of me? Because I found that vacancy announcement. But long story short, the day before the announcement closed, I found the announcement in my bag. And a good friend of mine, who's one of my best friends today, we literally drove to DC to drop the application off.
Oh, wow.
And within 2 weeks, I received a phone call about an interview. And I interviewed, and then I got the job with Department of Treasury, Office of the Inspector General. So that was the next financial position I had. I was an OIG auditor. I did financial statement audits, and then I did program audits. Program audits was pretty cool because we partnered with investigators, and we would go to organizations that had received federal assistance, and we would audit them to determine if they were using the funds in accordance with their assistance agreements. So picture me going into a bank or a financial institution with an investigator, and for some reason, most of the investigators were tall. They were tall, and they carried.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so they had guns, weapons with them. So we would pair up and go into these financial institutions to do these audits.
Is this unannounced, right? Or do they know?
Some were announced and some were unannounced. Mm-hmm. And so that was pretty cool. That was a good job. So I did financial statement audits and program audits with the Office of Inspector General. I met my husband there. So one of us had to leave. So I left and I went to Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, where I was a manager for financial management policy in the CFO's office. And then I took a 3-year sabbatical.
Oh, wow.
I was a stay-at-home mom for 3 years. So that was good. The 3rd year of me staying at home, my former boss from personnel, who introduced me to the banking industry, she reached out and said, hi, a lot of us are retired and we're working as consultants. I heard that you've taken some time off and we need to build our team. Would you like to come and work as a consultant? Okay, doing what? Doing what you do. Business processes, finance. Come in and interview. We'll tell you what the opportunities are, and then you get to decide where you want to work. Okay, cool. I'll do that. So I worked as a consultant for 1 year. And after working as a consultant and providing support to the government, naturally, I thought I may as well just go back to the government, because by then I had already put in over 10 years. So it only made sense to go back. So that was a pivotal point in my career, because I made the decision to go back into the federal government. And I would coin that whole phase that I just talked through, that was my mid-career phase. And during that time, I moved around in finance and mission critical occupations. I took time off to be a mom, stay-at-home mom. I also worked on various boards. So I was part of a lot of boards, a lot of nonprofit organizations, and that provided me with different type of leadership. So I had experienced leadership in various forms at that point. So once I just made the decision to go back to work, that was my introduction to the FAA. So I was introduced to the FAA, didn't know a thing about aviation, worked at FAA. I was actually in AVS and AOV, their Air Traffic Safety Oversight Service. I was in AOV, one of the original employees, stood up the organizations, stood up the area offices in Atlanta, Dallas, and Seattle, and I worked in business management. We moved out of town. So we left the DC area. We moved to Huntsville, Alabama. So I went back to the Department of Army. In Huntsville, I was the Human Capital Division Chief. So that's like in HR. And the last 2 years, I served as a Deputy Chief of Staff for the commander. So that was a good job, definitely different, because that was the first time in my federal career and actually in my life that I lived outside of the DC area, DC, Virginia area. We stayed there for 4 years, and then I returned to FAA in 2014. And for the past 11 years, up until I retired, that's where I ended my career at FAA.
So what made you switch from financial stuff to more like human-centric, if you will?
That was just individuals that I had worked with previously. So going back to first impressions are lasting. You just never know when you're going to cross paths. Those individuals that I worked with early on, as they ascended into these leadership roles, they were looking for good leaders and people to help build their teams. And even though I had a strong financial background, I was often asked to come in and start up new organizations, either from a business services perspective or from a people perspective. And that's how I made the switch from financial management to what I call the gray area administration or mission support.
And do you like that kind of?
I did. I had to learn to embrace it because coming from a strong financial background, being a budget analyst intern as an OIG auditor, leading a financial management policy, we were like operational. That was operational. When I transitioned and started working in FAA, especially FAA 2.0, I went to the air traffic organization. That probably was the hardest career choice and pivot for me because I was no longer mission critical. I was mission support.
Yeah.
I did not rise up through the ranks in aviation. So I really did not understand the language or the lingo or the people or the culture. And as you know, navigating a culture, penetrating a culture in a system it can be very difficult and very challenging.
You eventually did it though, right?
I did. I did. Thankfully, I did. I met some great people along the way, built a sense of community, some camaraderie along the way, and that really helped. But it was, I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, it was quite a challenge. When I first started in the air traffic organization, I was in safety and technical training, and I was in standardization. And it was all about standardizing processes, business services. At the time, there was a shared service organization that was established, and it was in this infancy stage, so it wasn't efficient. It wasn't highly efficient, and it probably wasn't meeting the needs of the customers based on the original purpose and intent of even establishing the organization. And so I was hired to create shadow staff. And that's what we did. We created a shadow organization because at the end of the day, it was about the mission and getting things done, making it easier for the operational elements to focus on the operations while we helped build the business and took care of all the business services. But going into that environment, when you start talking about standardizing processes and quality management systems and following policies and procedures on the business services side, they wanted to focus on the operations. They didn't want to have anything to do with that. Yeah. So just trying to find your space and find your place in that environment was a challenge.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So when, just taking me back a little bit, when was your first leadership kind of position? Was that back in the Army or?
My first leadership position was with the Department of the Army. When I came to FAA, I was already a GS-15.
Okay.
So I got a lot of my leadership training and development with Department of Army, and then also with the Department of Treasury in the IG's office.
Okay. And then when you got to the FAA, I mean, so you got there in 2014, and you were standardization manager.
Yes.
And then in 10 short years, I guess, give or take, you were executive director and VP. That's kind of a relatively fast, right, path with a lot of different jobs in there. How did you handle like all that change? I mean, a lot of times these are really big organizations, right? And then a new person comes in. How are you able to do that? I mean, it's hard when you come in, because it happens to the FAA a lot where people move around. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing, but it must be difficult to come in and there's a staff of hundreds or thousands or whatever it might be. And you have to kind of set a different tone, gain their trust. So what are some things that you did to try and do that? Because you've done it several times, it seems.
That's a good question. Whether you apply for a position that's been announced or you're tapped to assume a leadership responsibility, either way, it's difficult because you have to go into an organization, especially an organization that's already established, and you have to assume ownership and leadership of that organization. What I would say is, for me, is back to basics. It's always B2B, back to basics. I just remember my training and development from Department of Army, from Department of Treasury, and I just applied those principles in my FAA leadership roles. Treat people with dignity and respect, and you look for strengths in your staff. It's people first. People first, always. The mission is the mission, but without the people and without a dedicated, motivated, inspired staff, you can't get things done. So looking for strengths, always highlighting the strengths in people, and then building your team, especially if you have the opportunity to build your team, then that's always a plus. But realizing that sometimes you don't have the resources or the opportunities to build your team, you have to work with what you have. Then you have to find other ways of getting things done. I would say at the culmination of my career at the FAA, allies were really important. So we built a strong, cohesive leadership team, and we had allies. There were times as a leader of a mission support organization, I knew that if I pitched an idea, it would fall flat because no one expected it to come from me because they didn't see me as a leader. They saw me leading the mission support organization. It's like, well, how does she know about that? She's not operational. She doesn't know. And so I would find others to pitch the ideas for me because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who pitches the ideas as long as it gets done. So for me, it was always going into a new organization, taking the time to understanding the people, understanding the culture, understanding how decisions get made, understanding what makes people tick, follow the money. Remember, I rose up through the ranks in finance. So what gets tracked gets done, and you follow the money. People put money to priorities and things that are most important. And just taking the time to really get to understand the people in the organization, because you have to be able to motivate, as a leader, you have to be able to motivate and inspire people to do things. You can't make people do stuff. It doesn't matter. They're adults. You can't make them, but you can motivate and inspire them to do their jobs and to do their jobs well.
That's interesting. It makes me think about just that time it takes to build trust, right? It takes time. My wife and I are watching, what is it? Love is Blind. I love that show. We always bet on who's going to say no at the end. But the concept of building that much trust in 10 days or whatever it is, it's almost impossible. Doesn't mean those people are not going to be together to work out, but it takes time, right? You have to build trust. It's one of those things you cannot fast forward. And then also that time to just even understand. I think I have this right. The company Chanel, I believe they make all their new executives either promoted or hired. They're not allowed to say anything in a meeting for 90 days. You just listen. Now that it sounds a little weird, but you get the concept. The idea would be just take it all in.
Exactly.
Like, how can you make any decisions or chime in,
exactly,
even though you want to, right? That'd be an interesting, concept. But it's what you're talking about. Sounds like you took the time to understand the organization and the people,
right,
before maybe deciding what to do or what have you.
I had some excellent role models. My boss, when I was at the Office of Inspector General, there were, I would say, about 5 to 7 young Black females. He took us under his wing, and he talked to us about investing, maximize your 401k. He told us, I know that you all are young and you're aspiring leaders, but remember what's important. So you can be on this trajectory and look for the promotions and go after the promotions. But once you get there, make sure that you look behind and see what's behind you. And make sure you don't leave a trail of devastation behind you along the way. He also talked to us about family. He said, families first. You can aspire to do great things and you can become the leader of an organization. But one day you are going to grow old and you want to be able to share that with family. So he talked to us about things like that. And what he did for us was he was the leader of the organization. And when we had staff meetings, instead of him sitting at the head of the table, he would sit on the side. And he would ask us, sit at the head of the table. And we're like, really? So we got comfortable sitting at the head of the table. He would rotate who would run the staff meetings. So he gave us the opportunity to sit back and observe, but also he gave us the opportunity to participate and engage and be in that leadership role before we were actually in the leadership role. So that was our opportunity to get comfortable and confident in our abilities to lead, regardless of what position that we were in. So I watched how he led, and I adopted some of those concepts. What I would say about establishing trust, when I assumed the acting role of the Vice President of Management Services, one thing that I had to learn was how to be vulnerable. I was comfortable being number two. I love being a deputy chief of staff. I love being a deputy vice president because as number two, that's where you actually get things done. Number one is outward facing. They're dealing with all the politics, all the shenanigans. But as number two, you're the one that's closest to the people. You're closest to the mission. You're closest to the operations. And you can, like I said, inspire, motivate, get people done. And it's like a cool job. Once I assumed the position as number one, that was a different type of leadership for me. I had to really dig deep into my leadership bank and pull out some skills that I didn't even know that I had or that I needed. And one was being vulnerable. My predecessor at the time had established regular recurring town hall meetings. And this was during COVID, during the pandemic. So it was virtual. We were having town hall meetings once a month. I remember the team coming in and said, okay, Talethia, you have to prep for your town hall meeting. Did we just have a town hall meeting? Yes, but that's the norm. People expect to receive information. We're on a regular cadence. Things are changing rapidly. You need to be able to communicate all the changes. Okay. I initially didn't have the confidence in myself to be able to carry a town hall meeting for like an hour. That means that I have to carry this town hall meeting for an hour, keeping the staff engaged, maybe telling a joke or two every now and then. And I didn't see myself as a jokester and not funny at all. So I was like just stressing over the town hall meeting. And so, of course, as a leader, you have a good team, good communications team. So they provided me with the script. Did a fantastic job with the script. We had our themes. We rehearsed. We did our dry runs and everything. So, okay, I'm ready. But I kid you not, every time I did a town hall meeting, I went off script. I went off script because during the town hall meeting, my instincts, my intuition told me you need to be vulnerable because they need to see you as a person, as a human being, and not as a figurehead. And so you have to be vulnerable. They have to, talk to them about your family, talk to them about their kids. And I was very guarded because I was taught that you don't do that. Work is work, personal is personal. And so you keep it business. But I had to learn how to be vulnerable because I was leading a support organization where it's a thankless job. Some of the employees in a mission support organization don't feel valued. They feel like the work that they do doesn't matter, is not as important. And so taking time to build that trust, I had to make the time to do that. So that's where I learned that. And it ended up working out, of course, and it ended up being fun, but I can't sit here and say that it wasn't a tough time. Mm-hmm.
Well, so your reputation, according to Mr. Jeff Planty, is you have a great reputation for courage, clarity, and developing people. In fact, his quote is, Jeff Planty, great mentor, great friend, she is one of the most courageous leaders I've ever met. She stands for what she believes in and ensures alignment when the room needs it. Do you agree? I mean, that's a big statement. That's really cool. And courageous is what you're talking about, because being vulnerable is being courageous. Put yourself out there. And I think as a leader, that is, I mean, it's our form of courage is to be the first to try something or be the first to put yourself out there. You might get hurt. You might be laughed at. You might make a mistake. But then you're showing people that that's okay to do that. Because if you can do it, then, anybody can. So it seems like it's resonating with you a little bit, huh?
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, I would say that just going through life, I didn't see myself as being courageous, but I can recall specific times when I had to exercise courage. As an auditor with the Office of Inspector General, once I had to go and do an audit of a law enforcement entity because at the time, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, ATF, Secret Service, Customs, they were all part of the Department of Treasury before the divestiture of the Homeland Security after 9/11. So as IG auditors, we had to go out and audit the Treasury bureaus. And I recall one time going out to an audit in the middle part of the country, law enforcement organization. People don't look like me. And I went on that audit and I was the auditor in charge. And when I got to the facility, the individuals receiving me did not want to follow the process. I'm a process person. I follow the process. I was an auditor, finance, most of my jobs early on. There are processes and procedures that you have to follow. And so when they flat out told me that they weren't going to follow the process, I had to step away, and I went and I called my boss. And I told him, I said, they're not complying. They don't want to follow the process. And he said, we set you there for a reason. We know you can do it. You can do it. You know what the process is. You know what you're supposed to do. Go in and get it done. So I went in the restroom and I had to get myself together. And I remember being in the restroom and I looked in the mirror and I had to literally talk to myself and say, you know what you're doing. You belong. It doesn't matter what they think. Go out there and get it done because you know what you're supposed to do. So get it done. So I got myself together. I went back and my smiley self, because that's who I am. And I was my true authentic self. And I went in and I pretty much told them, listen, this is what we're going to do. This is how this is going to be done. This is my role. This is your role. So let's get started. And by the end of the audit, by the end of the second day, do you know that they offered me tickets to a baseball game, to a major baseball game? So it worked out. So that was one of the first times.
Like a movie, though, right? Like,
yeah.
I keep picturing. That's awesome.
So that was one of the first times that I had to exercise courage. But I would say throughout my career and throughout life, I was taught that people are people. You put your pants on the same way I put my pants on, one leg at a time. And so when I met individuals who were in higher leadership roles, I was naturally curious. So I would go, if we were at an event, I would go up and extend up my hand. Hi, how are you? I'm Talethia. Shake hands, you meet, you have conversations, and it just came second nature to me. So when I was in situations where that wasn't the norm, I'm like, why not? They're humans. Why can't we go up and talk to people? So I exercise courage in that way. Somehow along the way, once I got in these senior leadership roles and had a seat at the table, courage showed up differently. It required a different type of courage. It required speaking up when no one wanted to hear from you. It required courage in knowing when to speak, when to lean in, when not to speak. Somewhere along the way, that courage that I had probably as a child, or courage that I had as a young adult, it just looked different and it felt different. So I found myself sitting on my hands, not saying anything. I found myself not being comfortable wanting to say stuff because I didn't think it would be well received. I felt myself shrinking in spaces where I needed to not shrink. And then, I don't know, I'm sure it was development. I'm sure it was exposure. I'm sure it was a lot of self-discovery, self-reflection, and talking to myself. I realized, what's the worst that can happen? You have to stand on what you believe in, and you have to stand on what's right. And because I grew up in the process, I rose up through the ranks in these process-oriented jobs and positions. What does the data say? Follow the data. So have courage and present data, present the facts. People can get mad at you, the messenger, but the facts and the data still remains the same. So once I took that stance and had that mindset, yeah, I was like unleashed, but in a respectful way.
So was that I was just curious, was that also a moment of it happened like that, or did you test out a couple times?
Oh, I had to test out a couple of times. Yeah. I pushed the envelope a couple of times. And I would say I've been blessed to have a community, just being surrounded by the Jeff Planties of the world, people who are advocates. I mean, Jeff is like an early adopter. He's a trailblazer. People who created the space created the space for others to have a seat at the table and to have a voice. And so during those instances where I would sit on my literally sit on my hands and not say anything, there were people in the room who took notice and would invite me in. And, well, Talethia, what do you think? Well, I think Talethia has something to say. What do you think? And then that gave me the opportunity to speak up. And at that point, I had to exercise the courage because they opened the door for me.
So that's something that I'm trying to work on too, is when people are quiet, is to try to get their voice included, but not put them on the spot.
Right.
It's kind of I guess, an art form a little bit, because they may not actually want to say something, or maybe they do and they're afraid to. And those are two different things. So there's a couple common themes. One seems to be, I guess, relationships and having a network. Talk to me about that, because is that something intentional, or is it just something that you naturally, that's just how you are? You develop relationships because we're humans and we're meant to be kind of together? Or do you feel like, I need to intentionally develop relationships, not so I can progress, but just so it helps me out? Like, or is it a little bit of both?
I would say it's a combination of both. So growing up, I'm my mother's only child, but I have two siblings, my dad. So I have, but they're 10 and 9 years younger. But my family structure is I have about 21 first cousins.
So, wow.
Or nothing. We're all like a year apart.
Wow.
And summers, we all were together. So you had to get along. You had to figure out a way to get along and build relationships. Some you were closer to than others, but that's just family. So in my family, I have a large extended family. My husband has a large extended family. So we're around people all the time. So that's on the family side. I realized in a work environment, you need people. You have to establish healthy relationships in order to get anything done, because life wasn't designed for us to do things alone. There's no I in team. Some things are meant for individuals to accomplish, but other things is better when you're connected, and it's better in team. So just naturally, I think it's just a part of me. It's in my DNA. I get on the elevator. Good morning. It's just common courtesy. You walk into a room in DC. I force people.
No one says anything.
I force people to talk to me.
Oh, good.
If I get on the elevator and I see someone that's like have a grimace or they're sad or whatever, then I will purposely, intentionally speak to them. Speak to them to just brighten their day or just to get them to talk. I remember I was in my early 20s. In our church group, we had a single ministry. And a lot of the ladies, singles could be young adult singles, it could be middle age, or it could be older singles by way they were widows or what have you. And I remember one lady in our group, she said, I love coming to these outings and events because I live by myself. And when I come here, this is the only time that I get a hug. Otherwise, I don't get a hug because I'm by myself. Oh. And I remember that. And so that's why when I greet people, I hug, because I don't know. I don't know if you live by yourself. I don't know when was the last time you had a hug. But if I can brighten your day to give you a hug, then that's what I do. So relationships are important to me. Now, what I will say is, remember I mentioned my boss when I was at the IG's office and how he pulled all of the young ladies aside and talked to us about just life. He just provided us with some life lessons. I've had that throughout my career. I've had fabulous, wonderful bosses. I remember my first boss when I was at Fort Myer, Colleen Baldwin. She was my boss. We hadn't talked in 10 years. An opportunity presented itself. She reached out. I know I worked for her on 3 different occasions before she retired based on relationships. I would say the latter part of my career at FAA, being a part of the officers group and air traffic organization, without relationships, we wouldn't have been able to get anything done. And so you have to be intentional about establishing those relationships, whether it's relationships with your peers, whether it's relationships with your bosses, the senior leaders, or whether it's relationships with your team members or subordinates or what have you. It's important. You just have to do it. So yeah, I was intentional about building some relationships. And then there were some relationships that I realized, they're not healthy. They're not healthy relationships. So those you just kind of park and you just leverage those whenever you need them. But for the most part, yeah, I'm about community.
Yeah.
I think community is important.
Yeah. And I now that you're talking about it, I think at work, combination of a natural relationships and intentional ones that become natural are important, because if you just rely on like natural, you may never have a relationship with somebody, but if you did, it would help you. So reaching out and saying, let's have lunch or let's have coffee, just, it doesn't hurt. I like to do it. You get to know a person.
Right. And follow up. I wasn't good with follow through. I would meet people at conferences and take their business card and then not follow up. So I am more intentional about following up. Speaking of relationships, stakeholders, that stakeholder engagement is important because you have to build those relationships with your partners, with your business partners. A lot of times when this was really key and critical at the FAA, when I worked in, I did the detail in HR, and it was just really important. HR is HR. In order to...
They're right over there. Our HR is right over there. Yeah, they're listening. Yeah.
HR professionals, in order to get things done, you have to have a relationship with your business partners. Because a lot of times when we're in these jobs, if you're developing policy and you're implementing policy, but you haven't tapped the individuals who are going to be executing the policy, it's a missed opportunity. So you have to have that stakeholder engagement. So that is part of my plan when I go into any organization, is to understand who the key players are.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Following the courage theme, and I've heard you say it a couple times even before we started recording. You like to represent the people who are not represented or don't get the opportunity. When did that start for you, and what inspired that? And just talk about that a little bit.
That probably started early in life. So for me, I was born to, my mom was a teenage mom. So my mom had me at 16.
Oh, wow.
And so I would say, I don't know, back in those days, having a teenage mom, I'm sure it was hard for her, but she made sure I had everything that I needed to be successful. And she had a community and a village around her. My dad was present, but my father died when I was 13. And so that right there gave me the drive and determination to always do my best, but always look out for other people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, just in life, when I think back, we walked to school. And so when you walk to school, you just came across a lot of people from different walks of life. And I think people were probably bullied back then. We used to people were teased and picked on. Now it probably was a form of bullying. And so I always, something in my heart always went out for people who were like picked on or bullied or like the underdogs. So I always carried a special place for them. So I made sure as a leader, as an adult, that I pay attention to people, pay attention to those signs. If somebody is quiet, then I try to figure out a way to draw them in.
There's a quote I got from Jeff as well. Something that it's potentially your philosophy. Hopefully he got it right, or a quote that you have, which is grow where you're planted. Mm-hmm. Grow where you're planted. Is that true? Is that one of your quotes? Bloom where you're planted. Okay. What does that mean?
That means regardless of where you are in life, regardless of what type of job you have, what type of title you have, it doesn't matter. You just show up and you do your best. And that bloom where you planted is actually the theme of that third phase of my career when I worked in the Department of Army down in Huntsville. Then I left and came back up here to DC and was at the FAA and had many different jobs inside the agency. Regardless, I had to bloom. You show up, you do your best, you look for opportunities to make the place better than you found it. You develop people to bring out the best in people, because it's really not about me. At a point, it's not about me. It's about others. It's about bringing out the best in others. It's about paying it forward to the next generation. Someone gave me a plaque that says bloom where you're planted. So now I actually have 2 of those.
Nice.
In my house on my wall. So yeah, that's I live by that.
That's great. That's great. So do you work with a lot, or did you in before we get into what you're up to now, leading up to pre-retirement, were you involved with any sort of programs and helping youth find their way?
Yes, that's my passion. So my job, by extension of working at the FAA has a mission to introduce youth to careers in aviation. There was an actual youth in aviation task force. It was language in the reauthorization bill a couple of years ago. There was funding. So FAA has an aviation STEM asset program where the employees in the agency partner with community partners, industry partners to introduce youth to aviation. So if I have their ACE, aviation camps, career exploration camps, annual events. So definitely had a team of individuals who participated in those ACE camps, and I will actually go to the different events to see it in action. So that was the first aspect of it. But in my personal life, my children were involved in all different types of activities, whether it was sports or community type activities. So by extension of them being in activities, I was on the board or I was an officer. And so we planned activities for the youth. So we will partner with organizations to introduce those kids to aviation. You know what the stats are. There's underrepresentation in the aviation field because you can't be what you don't see. And so just introducing youth to explore careers in medicine and aviation and engineering or what have you, that's what we did. So we introduced our kids, our African-American kids, to careers that they wouldn't otherwise be interested in. So that was an aspect. And it's just something that I'm really passionate about.
That's awesome. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the future, what's some pieces of advice or traits that maybe you're looking for today's leaders or people that are just becoming leaders or about to be future leaders based on things you've learned and just kind of like where things are with technology and society and everything?
Mm-hmm. What I would say to future leaders is they have to learn how to bring their A game. And when I think about A game means different things to different people. But when I think about bringing your A game, one, regardless of what field you go into, you have to believe that you belong. You have to know beyond a shadow of doubt that I belong here. And so you have to know your why. You not have to know who you are, and you have to know why. What is your purpose? Why are you here? What does that look like? What motivates you? And once you anchor yourself in that, that's the first thing. The second thing with bringing your A game is ask questions. Don't suffer in silence. There are too many people at various levels of the organization who sit there and nod and they don't have a clue. They just don't. And they don't have the courage or they just don't know how to ask the questions. Just ask questions. And I'm thankful that I was an auditor, and in auditing, you have to learn how to ask questions.
Yeah.
And now that I'm going through my coaching certification, I'm learning how to ask even better questions. So get comfortable asking questions. Ask questions. Be naturally curious. It's okay. And then the last thing for future leaders is you have to have community. You can't do it alone. It's not designed for you to do it alone. There's so many resources and people who are willing to gravitate and cultivate and help you develop and learn who want you to be successful. Reach out, have conversations with people, get a mentor. Mentors are important. You need a mentor. You need somebody who's done this before, who's in a similar field, who can talk to you about some tips, some pitfalls, some things to do, some things not to do. But you also need sponsors. You need people who are going to speak on your behalf when you're not in the room. That's important also. And then for this generation, they have to talk. I mean, I have two young adults, 21 and 19. My daughter's a talker. She's a talker. My son, I don't know if it's a male thing, no offense to the men, but he's not a natural talker. And so we have to make sure that we put him in situations where he's talking. You have to open your mouth. What is it saying? Closed mouths don't get fed. Mm-hmm. So they have to talk. Texting is okay. So if you go to an event, if you go to a conference and you meet someone, take a picture, take a selfie with the person, and then follow up with a text message. Follow up, send them the text message. Hi, it was nice meeting you at X event, and then attach a photo, the photo that you took, so they can remember and connect the dots. So those are the things. They have to learn how to bring their A game. And by bringing their A game is the things that I just mentioned.
That's awesome. So what are you up to these days? Talk to me about, you have your own business, E2T2.
I'm excited. Thanks for asking. This next phase in life, it has to be all about me and things that I'm interested in. And when I say me, I mean me, my family also, of course. But on paper, it's educate, empower, teach, and train. And so we are an organization and we help people unlock their full potential. So from students to executives, we help you navigate challenges, determine who you want to be, and help you get there.
All right, I'm going to get into some, what I'm calling, I don't like it, but signature questions. I'm asking the same question for every guest. How do you, Talethia, define success?
That's a good question. I literally just asked this question of a client. For me, success is synonymous with impact and being significant. Success isn't about how much money I have. It's not about material things. It's really about making a difference and being impactful. If I can do that, then I consider myself as successful.
Okay. So making a difference.
Making a difference. Yes. Mm-hmm.
If there's one or two pieces of advice, you had a time machine, you went back, that you would give your younger self, what would that be?
If I knew then what I know now, I would tell my younger self to go big. Go big. Go big or go home. Because there's so many opportunities in life. Regardless of if you are a dreamer, your dreams can become true. You just have to take the steps. And I don't think I really realized that until I was older. Because I was raised, you go and you get a good job and you have a career with benefits, and you want a pension at the end. And growing up in Norfolk, what is the industry there? It's the military. It's the government. And so that's where I went. I don't have any regrets because I had a very successful career. I had a very effective, productive career. So no regrets. But what I would tell my younger self is whatever your dream, whatever you wanted to do, just go for it. Just try it. And if at first you don't succeed, try again. I know that's cliche. That's probably a saying, but yeah, just go for it. And that's what I'm telling my children, my young adults. Go for it. My children at the time, they play all sports. I told them, try it. But the rule is, if you start it, you have to finish the season. So if you're going to start playing football, you're going to finish the season playing football. If you start baseball, you're going to finish. If you start track, so yeah, they tried it all, but they had to finish. So
go to it. Because a lot of people like this. It's easy to start something, hard to finish.
Oh no, you're going to finish it if you start it.
Yeah, we need to talk. So you talk about motherhood a lot. How did that how did it change you? And do you think it transferred? Is there something that transferred to leadership and to your career based on that?
Looking back, motherhood is like leadership. Being a parent is like leadership. There's no manual, even though they have these books out. I forgot the name of the book now. I wish I could remember. But there are these books that were out. How to be a parent. I can't remember. But those are somebody else's stories. You don't know what you don't know. And it's really baptism by fire. You learn by doing. And being a mom, you're it's that responsibility, because you're, as a leader, you're responsible for an organization. You're responsible for people. As a mom, especially when they're like toddlers, you have to inspire them. You have to make them do stuff because they're toddlers. Toddlers can be kind of rebellious and they have their own mind and they're stubborn and they do this. And so
where
doing this. And so you have to get them to do things that they don't want to do. As a parent, there's a lot of encouragement. Depending on where you are in your parenting, it takes on different roles. The same when you, as a leader, you may be a leader of a startup organization. You may be a leader of a well-established organization, but it requires different skills. I've learned as a mom, as a parent, at one point, I was the CEO of my children's life, but now I'm a consultant. It's not my responsibility to tell them what to do every step of the way. I'm here if you need me. And as a leader, it's the same thing. At some point, you have to stop doing and you have to start consulting. You have to start leading, bringing out the best in others. As a parent, you do that. As a leader, you do that. Help them to see their full potential and who they are so that they could be thriving and successful in their jobs and in life. So
it's a great answer. Yeah, wonderful. So another tradition now after 3 episodes is asking the last guest, or what question would you pass off to the next guest? So I'll ask you that. What question would you have for a future leader? Because the mission here, it feels like it's developing, is that learning about about leadership, and I pass that on. So what if you had to ask another leader, whoever that might be, what question would you ask?
My question to the next person is, how do you refuel when your tank is empty? As a leader, we carry a lot of weight. We carry the weight of the organization. We carry the weight of the people. There's a lot of weight. And as leaders, we can stand in front of the organization and we can come across as confident. We can come across as competent. We can come across as fearless, but inside it could be everything but the truth. And during those moments where you don't feel your best, during those moments when your tank is low, what do you do to refuel? So that's what I would want somebody to answer.
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know too. If you think this is a good question, then it was my idea. But if you think it's a bad question, it was Jeff Planty's idea. But I think it's him trying to help develop the list of potential leaders. But no, out of all seriousness, like, who do you think would be a next guest in the future that people would want to hear from as a leader that's attainable? Not like Barack Obama.
Right, because I was going big. Say, so you got to go big. You got to go big.
Or it could be somebody, that's not just someone you're curious about that would be you'd like to learn more about.
I went big. Like you said, attainable. I would say if you could get someone who is Congress, like a state, local state Congress member, I think that would be great to hear from them, because that's a different spin. Because I think your list right now is like government, feds or Fed affiliates, but someone in a different space. That would be good to hear from them. I think you should look for someone, and I'm thinking, so I'm saying this, and I'll probably give you some ideas. I may text you with some names. A younger person, early careerists that are in leadership roles, so you can get their perspective.
That's great.
I love because that. we're retired. We're retired, so we're telling you things based on a lot of wisdom and things that we've learned where we are now. But I think it would be helpful to hear from someone who's younger, who's in a leadership role, to get their perspective on things.
I love that. I'm glad I came up with that question.
I'm glad you did too.
Sorry, Jeff, but all right. Just a quick rapid fire things I'm curious about you. Do you have a daily grounding habit? Are you able to share it?
I will. I remember when I was an intern with the Department of Army, and there were 3 of us who were interns, and one of them, again, she's my best friend to this day, Kathy Jordan. And I remember being an intern in that office, and our boss at the time, he didn't have any respect for the interns. Like, he thought interns was like free labor. And I remember going into the office some days, and I just didn't want to be there, because I didn't feel like he was providing us with the caring and feeding and the development that we needed as interns. And so we had to get that from our mentors. But anyway, staying focused. What I used to do at home, I would put stickies on my mirror at home, those affirmations, because I just felt like going in there, like he was just draining me of my natural energy and my drive and my motivation. So I had to encourage myself. I would put on affirmations on my wall. I belong, or you're smart, or I don't know. Just I started that. That was my affirmation phase. So did that, lots of prayers, lots of praying, in that office because I just felt like it was toxic, toxic organization. So I learned that early on. Let's fast forward, even at the FAA, going into those high stake meetings, times when I had to brief someone or it was a launch, a prayer, lots of prayer and meditation. Sometimes in meetings around our large conference room table, I would sit on my hands and I would just pray. Pray before I speak. I had to practice keeping my mouth closed because God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And sometimes you have to listen more than you talk. So that was a way of grounding myself. So let's fast forward now. I think I mentioned that I'm in a coaching certification program. So I'll be a certified professional coach within a month or so. And I have been in this program since April. And as a result of this program, it has really motivated me and reaffirmed my belief that you have to be grounded and centered. And you have to connect with your higher coach, whatever that is, whatever that means for you, you have to connect with the higher coach. For me, it's God. So I make it a daily habit, start my day. I'll reach over to my phone when the alarm goes off and I'll go and I'll read my daily scripture. I've recently invited some friends to join the Bible app. So we have a Bible plan that helps. But I start my day with prayer and meditation. So I told you I'm doing coaching. So I'll be a certified coach. So I'll be coaching. And I realize if I'm constantly pouring into others, that I have to feed my soul. And so before, I like to kind of center myself with music. It doesn't matter what genre of music is. I like music. And then sometimes I'll just sit and just take deep breaths and just meditate. So I will tell you, as I was leaving the FAA every morning when I was on the VRE, I would listen to music on my ride to work. So that once I got to the building, I was like pumped and ready to go. So
Awesome. Thank you. What is one leadership trait you value the most?
Integrity was the first thing that came to my mind.
That's a good answer.
Integrity, because I that's kind of cliche-ish. It's like, oh, people are probably are, but integrity. And in that quick second, I was like, okay, come up with another word. Come up with integrity.
That's a good one. Do you have a superpower, quiet superpower that nobody knows about?
It's funny you should mention superpower because that is one thing that something that I normally would tell to my mentees is that you have to understand your why and you have to learn what your superpower is. And I called it the 5%. What is that 5% that makes you unique? 85% of what we do, other people can learn by observing you. Think about it. 10% of what you do, people can learn it if you teach them. But 5%, it doesn't matter if people watch me. It doesn't matter if I teach them, they're not going to pick it up because it's me. And so it's that 5%, that superpower. So I believe that my superpower at this particular point in time is stop building those relationships, connecting with people. And it's also just kind of staying calm under pressure.
So interesting. That's a pretty good one. Both of those are pretty good. Well, Talethia, what's next for you? What's on the horizon? You got your coaching thing coming up?
Yes. I'm excited. Still building because I'm going from executive to entrepreneur, which is new. This is a new phase. We laugh. I have my group of collaborators. Tash, I know she was on the podcast before, and we talk that now we are CXOs because building a business, you're doing it all. I don't know where the business is going to take me, but I have 2 areas that I'm focused on. One area is aviation STEM. So I still strongly believe that it's a responsibility of mine as well as my passion to introduce youth to careers in aviation. So I'm going to continue to do that in whatever capacity. And then also leadership, like women in leadership or just leaders in general, early careers leaders to senior leaders. continue to participate in events like this and Real Talk, where we create the space and opportunity to share information, share knowledge. Coaching could possibly be in my cards for aviation space, maybe some consulting, who knows what that looks like. And then the second focal area is disability advocacy. So my dream is to, one, partner with student success centers at colleges and universities or disability service and offer coaching to the students with disabilities on campus to help them build a confidence so that they can navigate college and to be successful. And if they're stuck, help them get unstuck. And also to coach parents of students with disabilities, especially those with elementary school students that are recently diagnosed, to help the parents build that confidence and assurance for themselves so that they could be better advocates for their children. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You're still giving back and advocating for people?
Still giving back, still advocating. I still have a life to live, and I still have a lot to give. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, I know those are two separate, distinct fields and focal areas, but at the root of it all, it's just helping people build confidence so that they can thrive in spaces that weren't created for them. That's at the root of it, at the heart of it. That's what it is.
I love it. Well, Talethia, thank you for your time. Thank you for teaching us to be courageous. Thank you for advocating for those that need a voice. And I learned this whole blooming where you're planted thing. That's a really cool thing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. This was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you.